It's an absolutely beautiful day today. I'm getting some steps in, some vitamin D and some crochet done. This empty lot is absolutely covered in what I think is knapweed, which is an invasive plant that ends up forming tumbleweeds later in the year. It gets everywhere. Right now it's in bloom and it looks really pretty. The lilac is beautifully in bloom. And this house has the dark pink and the light pink sort of lavender colour and the white. It's got a very strong scent, which I'm not sure about. And it often makes me sneeze when it's throwing off pollen. But it does look lovely. The vineyard owners are mostly putting up 8 to 10 foot high fences right now. To keep the deer out. Hello lovely people, this is Nicola back in the Stitches and Slapdashery home, not quite sewing room today. It's a beautiful day. May is a lovely month around here. The days are warm, the nights are cool. It's all very comfortable and lovely. I went out for a walk this morning and took some crochet with me. When I walk on my own, it's kind of nice to have something to do with my hands. I think people think I'm crazy, but what do I care? Maybe I am, and that's okay. Just having my second cup of Yorkshire tea of the day and laid everything out around me here. Seems like it's the Noah's Ark of vlogs today because I have 2 of everything. I have 2 sewing projects, one of which you've already seen, but I'm going to show it off again. And 2 crochet projects. Actually, maybe 3. Okay, that kind of spoils the numbers, doesn't it? 2 books and 2 new acquisitions. So let's put this somewhere where hopefully I won't knock it down. And we'll start with this. You've already seen this before because in my last vlog you will have seen me making this. There's obviously something about making something from scraps that's very appealing to people who watch YouTube because I can't believe the amount of views that video got. This scrappy bag here, I haven't checked today, but yesterday I was watching the numbers go up and up and up. And I think it was in the 400s yesterday. It's probably more now. But there's something about scrap projects that really appeals to people. So yeah, glad you guys enjoyed it because I enjoyed making it. I, of course, shared this to Instagram and Facebook as well. And one of my friends said, oh, it's lovely. You know, how can you get your joins looking so neat? I could never get my patchwork looking that good. And I said, well, I cheated. I just noticed there's threads hanging out my seams here. But I said I cheated because, of course, I used the gridded interfacing idea. I drew the lines onto the interfacing with my friction pen, then laid the squares down, pressed it and sewed it. So yeah, it's so fun. And what's nice about the 2-inch squares and using so many different fabrics is you can get away with putting things in there that you otherwise wouldn't. There's all sorts of weird stuff in there, but it just comes together in a big cohesive whole. It's like when people ask about using colors in a project, and I say, if you're in doubt, add more colors, because the more there are, the less obvious it'll be if one doesn't really quite fit. Yeah. Remember that, okay? Remember that the next time you're doing something colorful. I did get a little bit of footage while I was out walking, just because the view over the lake was lovely, and because the lilacs are in blossom, and it's just so pretty at this time of year. My backyard is actually looking green, and it goes from brown all winter to a little bit of green in spring, and then brown again in the summer. So I have to admire it while I can. We do have underground sprinklers, but we don't overwater because A, we're paying by the litre for the water, and B, water restrictions kick in really quickly by the city. So we have to do what we can. The other thing I made this week is this really cool little, or not so little actually, it's quite large, notions pouch. It worked out about 7 inches tall, so it would fit a lot in it. You may have seen this on the shorts I published this week. It's a design by Ellie at Craft House Magic. I have not subscribed to her channel for a long time, but I was reminded of her by the Ravelry thread for the Dodgy Bag Make-Along, which I mentioned in the last video. Ali at Little Drops of Wonderful and Claudia of Crochet Luna have the Dodgy Bag Make-Along going right now until the 7th of June, I think. And there's a thread in Ali's group on Ravelry, and somebody mentioned about this because someone was asking for recommendations for an easy bag to hand sew. This one isn't completely hand sewn, but it could be. The initial part, you're just joining together a back, a front, and a batting, and then flipping it out and ironing it and top stitching it. So you're just ending up with a finished square, which you then do nifty folding with to get the finished result. And I find that when you do that, though, sometimes the bulk of it can mean things don't end up exactly where they're supposed to. But that fits perfectly into the Dodgy Bag Make-Along theme, doesn't it? So I chose this fabric, which I thought was perfect. It was in the stash. It was one of the fabrics I bought a meter of last year to have just as a stash bonus. And it's got scissors and sewing machines on. These buttons have been in the stash for absolutely ages. You can't really appreciate them. They've got flowers. I don't know if you can even see. There's some lighter areas there. They've got flowers on them. This is a hair tie. I used Ellie's idea to use the hair tie. I went and got a whole card of them from the dollar store, just purely so I could finish this bag. So now I'm going to have to make lots more things with the same sort of fastening. So when you open the top flap, you'll see the lining I used, which is this awesome tape measure fabric. I just love that. And of course, because these are from the same range, they coordinate perfectly, same colors. So there's a main compartment right here. And then if you go in front of this flap, you get another slightly smaller compartment. And then there's another pocket here and another pocket here and another one here. A really, really tiny one here. I'm not sure what you'd put in that one. It is so small, I can only put my finger in to the first or second joint, and then that's it. It fits my finger, half a finger in. And then the front one is this one with this sort of pointy flap on the front. In theory, the bottom V of this pointy bit is supposed to land right in the center, but I didn't make sure it was going to ahead of time. So I had sewn this diagonal seam, which goes up behind this flap. And then I made a mistake and I sewed this flap all the way across here and had to unpick down to here. And then you do almost like an origami squash fold type thing with this part. And then you sew up here. So it's probably half machine, half hand sewing, or as that person recommended, you could do it all as hand sewing. And I didn't make it because I had anything particular in mind. You know me, I make things because I want to and because it's fun to make them, and then I think about afterwards where it's going to go or if I'm going to keep it or not. But I really like that bag, and it's squishy. You could keep so much stuff in there and it would keep it protected very nicely. Actually, it might work well for an interchangeable needle set or something like that, or some crochet hooks, or pretty much anything really. And that front little compartment there, perfect for some small embroidery scissors. And it was quick. I made almost all the way to that last button I made before I went to work the other day. I think that was the day I had a shift from 3 till 8. So I made the whole thing earlier in the day, and then the next day I stopped at the dollar store on the way to work, picked up the hair ties, and just finished this off. So yeah, I'm happy with that. I can hear a noise outside. I did have the deck door open briefly, and then I closed it because I didn't want all the noises from outside to come in. But I think I can hear a dog yapping a lot. I have one kid at home right now, so if he comes out of his room, I'll have to tell him to be quiet. I sent a message out to my friends yesterday and I said, who's up for a coffee morning on Friday? And of the ones who replied, they seemed to be busy, and the other ones didn't reply. So I thought, oh well, never mind. Don't bother then. I'll stay home and sew. Oh, what a hardship. I do want to make a top, and if it works out, more than one top. A couple of years ago, I made a linen top, which is just, it was from a commercial pattern, and I can't remember what it was, maybe a McCall's. And it was really simple. So it's just a pull over your head top. So it's fairly sizable, because obviously you don't want anything that's going to be too small to pull on, because it doesn't have any sort of front opening or neck opening or anything. And I just thought, wouldn't it be fun to make something similar, but in quilting cotton with a really fun print? It could be anything. You could have a top with cartoon characters on or something like that. And I just think that'd be really fun. And I was going through my closet this morning, because every 6 months I do a closet switcheroo. Every spring and fall, I get everything out of my closet, or should I say the half of the closet that I have to share with Mr. Stitches. And I put all the non-seasonal stuff on the top shelf and then just bring down the seasonal stuff. And I do have a lot of t-shirts, but I just think it would be so much fun to have some more cotton tops. The only downside to cotton tops is you have to iron them, right? If you throw them in the wash and bring them out, they're going to be all crumpled, not like cotton spandex t-shirts or something where you can just put them in the dryer or even hang them on the line and get away with just putting them on straight after. But I think it'd be worth it. So I think tomorrow I am going to go through my patterns and pull out something. And then even if I have to piece quilt cottons, in case I don't have any pieces that are large enough, which is highly likely, I might even piece fabric to make a sort of a patchwork top. Anyway, that's still in the marinating phase. We'll see how that works out. Crochet now. I used one of the balls of Lion Brand yarn that I did a review on a few months back. It's the Lion Brand Feels Like a Dream. And it's, I can't remember what the colorways were called on this, but it's a light blue anyway. It wasn't called light blue. And it's funny because I remember that when I was reviewing this, I said I hated crocheting with it and I didn't enjoy using this at all. But actually, once I got started on this beanie, it wasn't so bad. I did a top-down beanie, and I also have a tutorial for making a beanie without a pattern, just running with what you have as far as yarn and hook is concerned, starting at the crown, working down. And that's what I do with most of my beanies that I make. I just wing it. And that's what I did with this one. And can I remember what I did here? Yes, I went from I think it was a 7mm hook down to here and did the last couple of rounds with the 6mm hook. It'll be on my Ravelry project page. If you're interested in looking that up, it'll be on the Ravelry project page. I'm Nicolaknits on Ravelry, and I will have all the information on there. So once I had finished this adult-sized one, I had lots of yarn left, and so I made a child-sized one. And look, I put little ears on it. I did consider putting ears on the adult-sized one. I had enough yarn, but I didn't. But I just think that's so cute. It really makes it, doesn't it? So that's a nice little, maybe a parent and child set, perhaps, for somebody. Again, I have no idea who this is going to be for at any point. Not my color. I won't be wearing those. I think I already mentioned that when I went out walking that I was crocheting as I went. There was one person whose house I was passing. He was outside in his driveway, and he said something like, "You must be pretty good at that to be able to do that and walk at the same time." I said, "Yeah, well, I haven't fallen over yet." So what I did before I went out is I grabbed this, what do they call these? Japanese knot bag, right? Where you have the longer thing that threads through the shorter thing. They are perfect for putting over your wrist. And I thread the yarn out of the hole here on the side. So it just streams out of there effortlessly. That wasn't the word I was looking for, but it'll do. So before I went out, I put this ball of yarn in it, or cake of yarn in it. I caked up these 4 paint box cottons in the one cake ages ago, probably at the beginning of the year when I was going through the stash. And just because if you don't know what you want to make or what you want to do with yarn, the granny square is always the answer. This is what I've done so far while I was out walking this morning. And I'm using a 3.75mm hook. I don't usually like small hooks, but actually this is, I think it's a DK yarn, and a 3.75 does make a very neat granny stitch, I have to say. I don't think this is mercerized, this cotton. It's just, something has made its way in there that doesn't belong. Oh, I think I just dropped it in my mug. Okay. Yeah, I don't think this is mercerized cotton. It probably is just basic 100% cotton. And because I haven't used it much, I don't know whether it'll fade or what it'll feel like after it's been through the wash. It should soften up nicely, although it's quite nice to work with anyway. And I don't know what this is going to end up being. I might just keep going and use this whole thing and make a little hand towel or something. I don't know yet. So last time I was talking about the books I was reading, and I had read Kristin Hannah's The Women, which is a really good read. it's about the women who went to Vietnam. It's a novel. And this woman goes to Vietnam to be a nurse, because her brother signed up to go. And she wanted to follow him. Unfortunately, before she got sent over there, he had already been killed in action. But she went anyway, and she did two years there. And it's devastating, really, what happened there. But what I also appreciated was the fact that the book covered the feelings that the Vietnam vets felt when they got back, because a lot of Americans had decided by then that the Vietnam War wasn't good, and the US shouldn't have been involved in it. And so they weren't lauded as heroes when they came back. They were basically spat upon and criticized. And so as a result, a lot of them had more PTSD than they might have otherwise had. And the women especially did not receive the recognition they deserved, because a lot of the times when she told people she wanted to go and get group therapy, the same as the men were getting, and they said, women didn't go to Vietnam, you don't belong here. But she had been. Yeah, maybe she didn't carry a machine gun and shoot at people, but she was getting bombed at the military hospital. She was risking her life. She was seeing the horrendous injuries that the men were coming in with. And she was trying to save their lives. And she had as much post-traumatic stress as the next guy. I think if I had been older in the 1960s, I would probably also have been protesting against the US being in Vietnam. But I was in primary school at the time. To me, war is never the answer. But it was a really good read, and I appreciated learning more about what happened. So the second Kristin Hannah book I read, it's called The Four Winds. And this one is set in the 1920s and 30s. The protagonist is a very tall woman of 25 at the beginning of the book, who has not married, and her parents have been quite unloving towards her. She had rheumatic fever, I think, when she was in her teens, and they just kept telling her she couldn't do this, couldn't do that. She was too weak, too ill to do anything. And they never seemed to show any love towards her. And she grew up with absolutely zero self-esteem. And the one time she gets the courage to make herself a dress, a party dress in red to go out in, and goes out. She gets into trouble, shall we say. She meets this guy. And of course, the first guy who pays any attention to her, because she is starved of attention and love, she ends up, yes, you can imagine, having sex with that night. Gets pregnant, and from there on in, that's the story. She has the children. She has his children, and she ends up living with his parents. It's in Texas in the 1920s. And then in the 1930s, of course, the Great Depression, the Dust Bowl era, the fields were dead because there was no rain, there were dust storms. It was so painful reading this book. I almost gave up reading this book because it was awful, in that you just try and imagine what it's like to be scraping for every bite of food and drop of water, and the fact that they try and keep sweeping the house and doing laundry when there's just going to be a layer of dust on it all in another hour or the next day. It's just horrendous. She does try and find a better life for herself and her kids, And then the squalor just gets worse when she gets to California. So I'm not going to say any more about that. It's an excellent read, and there is some hope in it, but there's also a lot of sadness in it as well, and struggle. But I guess a book should give you all the highs and lows, right? If a book doesn't make you feel something, then what's the point? And this book definitely makes you feel something. The other book I've got from the library this week is this rather nice one. It's called Block by Block Blankets and Afghans. Lovely and colourful. It's by Amanda Perkins. And the granny squares and blankets in here are very lovely. The one thing, I am so picky on some things, honestly, I probably shouldn't admit to this, but I think that this book was originally published in the UK. And so it's been adapted for the American market. It does have US terms, but every place in the book where originally it said blanket, they've put blanket/Afghan. And so you're reading through the introduction, and every time you get to blanket/Afghan, you kind of hitch on it and stumble over it and think, wow, that sentence is really clunky now. And I just can't help feeling that North Americans know what a blanket is, right? A blanket's a blanket. And I'd love to know why Americans started calling blankets Afghans. Because to me, an Afghan is someone who comes from Afghanistan. You know, perhaps someone can tell me that. Why the word Afghan for a blanket? Apart from that, it's a really nice book. I'm such a picky git, honestly. But yeah, absolutely gorgeous designs in there. Will I ever make any of them? Probably not. I'm probably just going to flick through it and take it back to the library. However, on the Granny Square theme, I did get 2 new acquisitions from Amazon this week. Sorry, Amazon, I know. And one of them was this. This is the Granny Square card deck. It has 50 cards in there, which have Granny Square designs on. Now you've got to be careful. If you go on Amazon and you find something called a Granny Square card deck, it might be a cheap knockoff that isn't going to give you what you want. I've heard from a number of sources that if you don't get the original genuine one, then you might be wasting your money. So this one is by, hang on, what's her name? It doesn't say on the box who it's by. Claire Montgomerie. So when you go on Amazon and you look this up, you have to make sure it says the original genuine Granny Square card deck by Claire Montgomerie. Do not buy any others. So in there, you've got a little leaflet that helps you interpret the charts. If you've never worked with crochet charts before, that gives you a little bit of advice. And then in here, you've got 50 cards, which I'm probably going to drop all over the floor in a minute. So I'll just show you one. Don't want to breach copyright, but I'll just show you one. So on the front, you get a beautiful picture of a finished square. And on the back, you get a chart for making it, along with a couple of notes on the side. So what you could do is, if you wanted to make a blanket out of lots of different squares, you could actually lay these out on the floor, on your carpet, and make a virtual blanket on the floor. Isn't it fun? I haven't even looked through all these myself yet. So there's 50 granny square designs there. But wouldn't it be fun to do one of these each week? And after a year, you'd have 50 squares. And you could make a small blanket out of it. I'm not sure. I suppose the size of the blanket squares or the size of the granny squares will vary depending on what yarn you use. So you could use anything from sewing thread up to super bulky yarn, couldn't you? But in theory, the designs allow for them all to be the same size and to be used interchangeably with each other. So I think that if you were to have a big bag of yarn and coordinating colours and did one of those every week for a year, that would be quite an interesting project. Very satisfying. I do have also a granny square book downstairs, which I could probably get rid of now because I think this probably covers all my granny square needs for a really long time. The other thing I got, so I was ordering something else and I just needed to make it up for free shipping. You know how that works. So I bought this pack of 2. I don't really need 2, but these are for helping you put safety eyes into crochet projects or anything, knitting projects, whatever. I was considering buying something that looked like a pair of pliers for putting the safety eyes in, because the last time, that's right, it was when I was doing my tutorial for that little amigurumi pride flag, and I was having so much trouble trying to get the washer on the back of the eye without breaking my nails and hurting my fingers, that I decided I need some pliers. But when you go on Amazon, there's a lot of plastic ones. There was one, I think, that was metal, and then there were some that came with a whole bunch of eyes, and I didn't want to buy a whole bunch of safety eyes because I don't make that many things that require it. And then I saw this, and it's just wood, and it's in a rather pretty snowflake shape, and it's got all these. I can't imagine I will ever use a safety eye that's this big. I will probably just use these smaller holes, but I think if you can rest the eye into the dip and then push the washer on the back, or maybe you put the washer in here and push the eye into it. I'm not sure which way around you're supposed to use it, but I will practice with it. And I just thought that would work. Wasn't too expensive. Just called a safety eye tool. Cheap and cheerful. And yeah, I'll give it a go. So let's see. I've had my exercise for today. I've talked to you for over 30 minutes. I should probably get a little bit of housework done after this. And then maybe what I can do is go look at my patterns. I think that's enough chat for this vlog. So anything that I get done tomorrow, I will put into the next episode. I think it's going to be fun going through my sewing patterns and picking out a pattern to make a fun top or 3. Should be really quick, as long as I don't have to patch a whole ton of fabrics together. We'll see. I hope you're enjoying your month of May. I hope you're feeling creative and inspired and finding time to do crafty things. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.